Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar with American West Metals. I'm Danica Warburton, the Investor Relations Rep for American West, and I'm delighted to be joined by Managing Director Dave O'Neill, who's here to share an update on both the West Desert Project and the Storm Copper Project.
Thanks, Danica, and thanks everyone for joining. It's been a little while since we did one of these, and we're trying a slightly different format today with a little bit of a video in there as well to take people into the West Desert where we're drilling at the moment. So what I'll do, very quick introduction and overview of where we're at with things, Storm and West Desert, and then we'll get into the Q&A section, which I'm really looking forward to. I really like that format where people can ask the direct questions of us and it's a bit more to and fro and I don't have to hear my own voice the whole time. But onwards, bear with me. So look, as people know, and there's some questions about the Storm PFS and timing of that and why we've converted to West Desert with a lot of our promo and stuff. And that's a natural progression where we are right now. The Storm PFS is continuing, full tilt behind the scenes, and I'll talk to that in a bit more detail. And we're also drilling at West Desert. So naturally there's when the rig's turning, there's the news flow coming through and there's the excitement around that. So that's why we have shifted the IR in the very short term, because, we're still waiting to settle on the Storm development options there. And I'll talk to that, like I said, in a bit more detail shortly. So West Desert, we are drilling. Drilling's going well. We're progressing very rapidly now, and investors would understand that we've just done a recent 10 million placement. And a lot of that is because of the early success of the project and the wanting to really extend that program without any limits on capital. You'd hate to start getting results and then have to do another capital raise on the back of that. It might cap the price and the market capitalization, etc. So getting it in now gives us that runway, allows us to execute without any overhangs. Maybe it's best that I just refresh everyone's memory on what West Desert is as it stands today. And back in 2022, we obviously did the drilling around the initial deposit. There was an existing deposit that when we purchased the project, we put a JORC compliant resource around that, and that's really defined what it is today, which is 1.3 million tons of zinc, plus copper, silver, and gold, but also around 24 million ounces of indium, and that's the unique part of West Desert. So it is one of the largest deposits in the USA. And look, and it doesn't sort of stand there with just indium. There's a lot of other metals in there, gallium, germanium, and tellurium, which we haven't really assessed in detail yet. But look, this essentially is a base metal deposit. And if investors saw our video that we put out last week, these systems are polymetallic. They don't rely on one metal for the value or price setting, etc., etc. So this is a typical porphyry system with the skarn, high-grade skarns around it. And that's where we see the growth opportunity here. And that's what we're seeing with our first drill hole. So just to refresh, this was a historical mining district back in the early 1900s. There are existing zinc, silver, lead mines there. They're on the periphery of the mineral system. We're very close to Bingham Canyon and Tintic in Utah, and close to rail. And we've got power, we've got water, and it's very well set up from an infrastructure point of view. Everyone, I imagine, on this call understands what indium is used for, but it's particularly becoming more prevalent and a higher value commodity now with the exponential growth in stealth aircraft and semiconductors and solar panels, etc. I won't talk too much about the dump sampling in the interest of time, but there is a very unique opportunity at West Desert. Like I talked about, we do have the existing mines there. There's a significant amount of spoils left there. Back in the day, they only mined what they could see and therefore threw a lot to waste dumps. And you see that with the gold mines around Western Australia, etc. And so we've sampled those. They're very high in zinc, lead, silver, as you can imagine. But also, and this is what the old timers didn't realize, is that there's also very high tellurium, germanium, and indium. And so we're looking at that. We've taken some samples. We're going to get them processed. in the nearby labs and to see how, what we can do with these, because the US government is providing funds for mining companies to rehabilitate some of these old mining dumps and giving them money to remove these spoils. And so if we can get paid to remove them and then make money from them, then that could be an easy win and an early stage opportunity for West Desert while we look at the bigger project. So that's what, West Desert, like we talked about quickly there, it is a big deposit as it stands today. And, certainly that first drill hole that we've drilled suggests it's only going to get bigger. It's in two main areas. We have the deep zone, which is sort of a part of a carbonate replacement deposit. It's sort of in sort of stratiform, and it sort of sits within the sediments. You can see the sort of curved form of that there. And the main deposit, which is a skarn, it sits on the edge of a porphyry. It's magnetite rich, which is an important bit that I'll talk to. And then we have that blue zone there, which is the oxide part of the deposit, which we're looking at with these waste dumps and et cetera, and on how to sort of maximize getting critical metals out of those materials up in that part of the deposit. So this is, and I'm glad I can actually talk to this slide with a bit of arm waving, but you can see the West Desert deposit there. And look, as I said, the skarns at West Desert and around Bingham Canyon and Tintic are magnetite rich, and so they have a distinctly high magnetic signature, as you can imagine. This image you see here is a magnetic image. You can see there in the black dashed line, that's the outline of looking down on the West Desert deposit as it stands today. You can see the little black dots there where the drill holes lie. We did you can see, obviously, there's a very distinct magnetic anomaly going about 4 kilometers to the edge of our project tenements, in fact. And we decided to step quite a way out, fairly risky drill hole in the scheme of things. But this is what we're all about. We don't want to just incrementally grow this thing. We want to see how big it can be very quickly on. And we stepped 400 meters out, and we've hit mineralization looks very, very similar to the West Desert main deposit there. So not part of the carbonate replacement down the bottom, the laminated stuff. It looks like more like traditional skarn. And so almost 80 meters of that material. So that's very significant. We've only got one hole in that entire margin, as you can see there. So that's a fairly big step out. And obviously, it's not in the best part of the magnetics as well. So as you can see there from around there as well, there's quite a few drill holes outside of the West Desert deposit that have hit high-grade mineralization. So we're fairly confident in what we've seen in this drill hole and what we see in the region, that there is significant zinc, copper, indium, silver, etc., to be had in this area. And the other thing I'll point to here is that if you can see the magnetic low to the north of the West Desert deposit there, we think that's the porphyry. You can see that there's a number of other magnetic features around that sort of low, the blue and the light greens. And you can see that there's no drilling in that. So this is when we talk about that only 10% of these projects been explored. That's just around the porphyry margin. And as we know, so Bingham Canyon originally started out as a lead zinc mine, and it's because the skarns were discovered early. And then that naturally progressed as you explore away from these, obviously, geophysical highs. You discover more things like the porphyries and things like that. So this is following that same pattern. That's what's very exciting about this project. Again, highlighting essentially what we've talked to. You can see there now, this is a long section looking north through West Desert. You can see it's a fairly aggressive step out that we've done. And we're looking forward to drilling the hole to the east of that, where the Utah Deep area is there. So look, it's early days. We expect the assays in a few weeks. They're already at the lab. So they're being processed. And the other thing I'll talk to as well, we did do some infill sampling in around the resource. And that, again, the assays have started to trickle in for that. So hopefully we can get those in the next week or two as well, and we can put them out to the market as well. But those assays will be different. They're not expansion. They're essentially outside of the current resource, but they are infilling key areas and skarns that were never just never sampled back in the day. And obviously with the XRF gun now, we can go through and look at these unsampled areas, determine that there is some base metals there, and then resample them. So that's what that project was about there. So hopefully there's two bits of news here: the existing resource work, infill, and then also this exploration work we're doing now. Interest of time, I'll just move quickly. So Storm. So we haven't been sitting still on Storm, and we have missed our date of the PFS, and that is really because it's presented a couple of number of extra opportunities for us. As you guys obviously understand, the original concept was around this fairly small scale in the scheme of things, beneficiation plant, which would put out a DSO type product. That's still absolutely the case, and we're assessing that. But also what the resource growth has done is obviously presented a different opportunity, which is a slightly bigger mine. We're sort of sitting in that 300,000 tonnes of copper now, but also the grades come down. And so what does that look like from a development point of view? What is the threshold to develop that further? And so we've gone, down a few metallurgical rabbit holes trying to get the best we can with this beneficiation, sticking with beneficiation, so not going to full flotation, etc. So it's generated two opportunities for us, and we're very close to defining, which one is the best pathway forward. Remembering that, what we're looking at now is phase 1 for Storm. Obviously, this is the belt scale opportunity, and we see, in 10, 15 years' time, probably transitioning to a phase 2 with further exploration, looking within the greater Storm belt, which is obviously we own 100% with our joint venture partner Aston Bay. But that'll take more capital, and rather than go back to the market and tap you guys on the shoulders all the time, we prefer to see what phase 1 does, what the best opportunity it presents to us, and put the best foot forward for Storm so we can fund the exploration and expansion into the regional areas. So that's where we're at. We're very close, and I do urge patience. We want to do it right first time. We don't want to have to go back and reassess things in the next phase. So what that looks like for permitting, I know there's a couple of questions of permitting. I'll touch on some of that now. Is that we've got the exploration permit approved. That's been fully approved for the coming years, and the pre-development work. And now we've got the mine application has actually been submitted as well. So that's in with the Nunavut Planning Commission. The next stage is the NERB. That's usually a 2-year timeline. That's already been past a few hurdles in there, and we're just waiting to see once we finalise the mine design, that'll push that forward. So it's all happening behind the scenes. Like I said, patience. Good things come to those who wait, hopefully. So keep an eye out for further news on that. But that might take us to the Q&A section, and I might just flick through slides as they become relevant, and we can talk to rather than just look at my head, we can look at interesting
Perfect.
slides.
Sounds good, Dave. Thank you. And thanks to everyone who sent through questions. Firstly, Dave, what's the delay? This one's from Jill and Vincent. They've asked, what is holding up the Storm PFS, and what aspects have required more work than expected?
Yeah, and I guess I touched on it just then, but opportunity is really delayed it. Like I said, do we proceed with the very small, well, not very small, relatively smaller scale DSO and much simpler processing opportunity, or do we progress with the bigger mine? And with that comes complexity and also cost. So, with beneficiation, we got it to a very efficient process with the PEA. As the grade drops and the tons increase, you increase your throughput. But we've also gone down some metallurgical rabbit holes and trying to perfect the system further and get higher recoveries. What is it? So, like all economic projects, it becomes a balance between capital and return, obviously grade, throughput, recovery, etc., etc. So So what you do is you open up all these different opportunities, and it's about settling on which one sort of suits. And look, personally, I think, where we are, the bigger mine probably needs further exploration work, and you probably want to make it 400,000 or 500,000 tons before you pursue the lower grade, bigger opportunity. Also comes with higher capital, as all these things do. Or stick with the more DSO, more robust, stockpile some of that lower grade material for phase two, which is going to be in 10, 15 years or whatever. So that's why we're still assessing these opportunities. And, it's taking us more time because we are finding these kind of unique and cool metallurgical ways of being hopefully one of the most efficient type DSO, first as well, projects globally in the terms of copper. So, yeah, that's what's really delayed us. Nothing
Yeah.
untoward. Yeah.
So, indicatively, when do you think you will deliver the PFS?
Yeah, well, like I said, we'd like to settle on in these coming weeks the final, which way is forwards, and then obviously make sure our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, and then put something out shortly after that.
Okay, thank you. And Jake has asked a question on the April capital raise. He wants to know why the capital raise was completed before the pre-feasibility study disclosure rather than after at a potentially higher price.
Yeah, well, I guess the two are disconnected, Storm and West Desert. So going back to West Desert, and the reason, and I think there was a question around, I may as well answer it now as well. Why
Mhm.
why there seemed to be a shift in the promotion of West Desert? Well, that's completely opportunistic and also a coincidence of where we're at with both projects.
Yeah.
In September last year, we had, a significant amount of money come in, and that was really to re-energize the American project. And while Storm was continuing, was fully funded to the PFS, etc.,
Mhm.
this extra money came in essentially to move, West Desert forward, but with the focus on critical metals, etc. And so as that has gone into the drilling phase, naturally, like I said, a lot of the promotion has gone to that because it is exciting. The drill bits turning, and it is producing news now where Storm's still waiting. And so the capital raise that we just did, based on the first drill hole, we were tapped on the shoulder as well and said, look, we've got another $10 million there. And like I said, do we hold back and who knows when we get assays back. These things aren't always in your control, et cetera, et cetera. And how long is that going to be? Do we cap the market, sort of the share price and the market
Yeah.
capitalization, based on, because people know that at some point we'll need more money to expand this, or do we go earlier and give us that runway, give us that space to actually execute fully now and expand the program if we need to, based on good results? So it's like I know everyone's crystal ball is differently, and you've got to do what you think is best at the
Yeah.
time. But again, sometimes when that capital comes in, you sort of can't refuse. So
Mhm. Well, Harrison's actually asked, was the US government offered an opportunity to invest in your most recent capital raise?
uh yes, and I can't talk to what is going on behind the scenes. Obviously,
Oh,
there's confidentiality around the US discussions and things like that. John's in Washington, DC as we speak,
John
attending the
Prinier.
Defense and Aerospace. Yeah, John Prinius, who's a co-founder of American West and a non-exec director. He's also with St. George Mining. He's attending the Defense and Aerospace, conference at the moment for critical metals so talking to all the right people. The government generally would come in to some of these projects in the past at a PA or a PFS level, with more certain timelines on development, etc. But they are now looking, you can see some other Australian ASX companies where they are dabbling earlier in. And so it's, giving them the confidence that that you have a forecast or a vision of developing these projects and what your plan is. Yeah, like I said, those discussions are ongoing.
Okay, brilliant. And I guess while we're on sort of the government engagement, Can you tell us how recent conversations with the US Department of Interior have been going and other agencies if they've progressed? What does the pathway to grant or loan funding look like, specifically for West Desert? And just to tie in there, one from Michael Bentley, thank you for asking a question. Can you give us a bit more detail on the historic mine waste opportunity at Utah, at Emma and Galena?
Yeah,
He's trying to understand how American West will make money from this.
sure. So the first bit, like I said, I mean, as discussions continue, they're confidential. We can't disclose anything
Okay.
or who, who
You
or
can
when
always
or
ask the question though on a
yeah. They may
webinar.
be listening.
Yeah.
But look, certainly look, there's a number of opportunities in terms of different streams of funding. So depends which department it is, but there's a critical metals fund, there's process innovation, and so there's a bunch of different streams of funding. So and there's also the mine reclamation, which Michael's actually referring to. So we're looking at all of those, and all of those are applicable to West Desert and to Storm. So some of these do cross over to Canada, and the Canadian system's also got their own versions of these. So we're looking at everything in both jurisdictions. But so the mine waste, so what would happen is, just say we had, I won't come up with a volume, but we would be paid to remove that material and rehabilitate that back to
Foot.
what it was pre-mining. This is just the waste spoils. And if we were paid to remove those, if we could move those to a place that could actually process them, then we have the ability to, whether it's through a small heap leach, being an oxide ore, with et cetera, then that is an opportunity for us. And so we get paid to move them off site. So this would all be toll treating, so we'd all send it somewhere. We don't know where we go to, but the places that, there's Bingham Canyon there's a copper smelter there's Trail in BC, which is zinc, indium smelters, etc. Or do we set up our own little heap leach on site? Again, refreshing investors, a lot of West Desert is patented land, so it's private land owned by American West Metals, and so that presents permitting opportunities for us where we don't have to go through the federal government, we just have to go through a local government. So permitting pathways to those kind of operations are very much quicker and easier to achieve without federal intervention, etc. So that's what it presents. We don't know all the ins and outs right now. That's something that we're still assessing, obviously.
Okay, brilliant. I'm sure Michael will ask a follow-up question if that wasn't sufficient, but we'll also link in the replay a link to the video that we just got done on the history of West Desert with the consultant geologist Mark in this sort of part. So if people want to have a look at that, we'll link to it later. Moving on, another funding question. This one's from Kieran on Ocean Partners financing. He says, what milestones remain before the Ocean Partners facility, up to 80% of initial capex, can be drawn down? And how confident are you that Storm can be funded without major shareholder dilution?
Yeah, so the Ocean Partner, the current heads of agreements stipulates that the funding can be accessed after FID. But discussions with Ocean Partners suggest that what does that look like? So, and because it is 40, it's, I guess, phrased as 40 million or up to 80% of the 80% or 40 million, whichever is the greatest, of the initial capital. So exploring that further, when does the initial capital come into play? And that's what we're exploring at the moment. So for example, if we were to order some of the equipment 2 years in advance, does that, access some of those funds? And so because it counts as initial capital, but it's been paid way back now, or in, shortly or whatever. So that's what we're exploring. So there's absolutely an opportunity to bring some of that capital forward, but nothing has been confirmed at this point. But that would be absolutely something we're looking at.
Okay. And Vincent's asked, is the 26 storm season progressing or not? If so, when? Is a
Yeah,
bigger camp planned?
exactly. So um, any the current camp we have now, just to touch on that quickly, is certainly enough to do what we need to do in the next year or two. As part of any development, there would be actually would move the camp up to where the storm site is, and we'd make that bigger and start the construction of a bigger operation there. So it's up to 60 people at the moment, so it can absolutely cater for anything we need to do.
Mhm.
Planning is absolutely ongoing. The drill planning, if we were to do pre-development activities like geotech drilling and or reclamation, sterilization or whatever drilling, we'd absolutely use that opportunity to do more exploration. Half the effort is getting crews up to there and opening the camp, and so while you've got a drilling crew there, you do exploration as well. That's a no-brainer, and for very incremental costs. So that planning work is ongoing. It'll obviously depend on where we land with the development scenario as to
Mhm.
what that plan looks like. And so, if it's the bigger one, then we'd go out and we want to probably add resources quite quickly. There's a lot of inferred resources we could convert to indicated and potential reserve already existing, and we might want to expand in the region there where the smaller opportunity might be more bespoke kind of program and starting to and then bringing some of the higher grade material in because the lower opportunity is a more higher grade mine. And so stockpiling some of the lower grade stuff would probably do work around the cyclone deeps, trying to bring some higher grade underground material into
Okay.
that mine plan as well.
Yes. Okay. And so when do you expect to be able to update shareholders on the exploration plans for Storm?
Well, like I said, once the development scenarios drop, then
Okay.
that'll flow directly out into what the plan looks like.
Okay, great. And I'm conscious of time. There's more questions on Storm, but I'm going to flick to West Desert, and hopefully everybody can hang around for another sort of 5 or 10 minutes. So we've mentioned that there's been a shift from Storm to West Desert, but you mentioned that it's not because West Desert's the new flagship. It's just a matter of seasonality and drilling. First, questions from Michael. It's on the Nevada Deep Discovery. He's asked hole 2601 intersected over 77 meters of visual zinc copper skarn at Nevada Deep. How does it compare to the main zone, and what does it say about the size of the system?
Yeah, great question. And now the other thing I will add is that our storm geological crew is actually working at West Desert. So
Oh,
we use
great.
this with that. Yeah, so that we Apex Geoscience, they've been fantastic for us in the past. So they're down there as well. And so we'll have to split them up, once Storm and West Desert go at the same time or get more people. So that's a good thing. It gives us continuity and we've got the right people doing the job. So yes, it looks very similar to the main deposit, and that's a simple an analogy I can give, where it's more, but it goes in and out. So we hit the porphyry. It looks like it's the skarn that actually sits on the porphyry. It's massive magnetite with sphalerite and clots of chalcopyrite through it as well. So there'll be some copper-rich zones. Um, based on the visuals that we've already published, you can see that there's some zones and the stuff that was in that video, very
Mhm.
high grade looking material, but also sort of more veinlets and not massive intervals of it. So you can probably infer kind of grades from what the maybe what the West Desert main zone looks like. And the thing to consider here is we can't see on the XRF what sort of other metals there are. We can tell if it's zinc, sphalerite, we can tell if it's chalcopyrite or other copper minerals, etc., because it's very clear. But traditionally, this stuff's very high in indium. And I'd have to say that what we've found around West Desert is the lowest risk element is indium.
Oh,
Zinc
interesting.
and copper comes and goes, depends where you are in the system, but there's indium through everything. We even find iron ore, so magnetite iron ore with indium in it. And so I would assume that is probably, I'm guessing that's probably one of the lowest risk elements. And so, hopefully we get more indium there, but also other things like gallium and germanium and tellurium, which haven't traditionally been looked at. The other thing I will point out is that obviously there's very interesting here, and I won't talk too much to it because the assays always make you a liar, but there is this high sulfidation overprint in hole one that we do not see much at West Desert. And so with this, we're getting a lot of arsenic pyrite, we're getting a lot of molybdenum down in the bottom of the drill hole, and that traditionally in these systems is associated with gold. Again, the niton can't tell us what we've got, but we do have tellurium up to 1,000 grams. We've got bismuth and we've got tungsten. Is what not tellurium, sorry, tungsten up to 1,000 grams, arsenic up to 2,000, and also strong bismuth. So there's all these other elements there, pathfinder elements telling us that we may have a sniff of gold as well. Hopefully some good intervals.
Okay, so when can investors expect the assays for the gold and the rest of the critical minerals that you outlined? And I guess what's needed what needs to happen before gallium, tellurium, and the other minerals can be included in an updated MRE?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of the historical drilling didn't assay for most of these metals, and so that's an issue. We'd have to go. There's some of the cores missing from the very, very earliest things. They did the basic base metals, silver and gold kind of thing. So,
Mhm.
that's why the gold and the indium, resources at West Desert are inferred. The work we've done just now, hopefully can upgrade a lot of that stuff to indicated for indium and gold. But, again, there's probably more work to be done for the other elements. But, the core, some of the core is still there. We could still do it. We'd have to assess that as it comes. But in terms of assays, like I said, we're at the whim of the assay labs now. So everything's been sent off. So it's wait.
Yeah.
I'd like to
Well,
think what we're seeing from the resampling is starting to come in here. That's sort of 3 to 5 weeks. That's what that's doing. The turnaround times there. So hopefully it's similar.
okay. You're clearly very excited about this latest drill hole, well, the initial visuals on it. But I guess with 10% of the prospective area explored, where are you going to prioritize the exploration going forward across the project?
So the clear opportunity as this slide sort of presents is to the east, chasing these magnetic anomalies. And like we said, we've got a direct correlation with the main and deep zones at West Desert with the magnetics and hole one showing that, there's zinc and copper potentially. Let's wait for assays. Again, disclaimers, we haven't got assays back. We're only using a niton gun. That it's showing that to be the case through here. So that's the obvious opportunity, and then opening to the north up the other porphyry zones. And look, the other gravity has been another good data set that we're using, and there is a lot of correlation between the mags and the gravity, but there's some gravity anomalies that we'd like to test as well, because not all the skarns here are magnetic. There's some silica skarns, and so zinc and chalcopyrite aren't very magnetic, and so you might have so we can't dismiss everything. So essentially, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to achieve, and we need to be efficient and systematically step through these targets as they present, and it'll be based on success as well. So, we won't go and do any infill or drill holes around West Desert. I don't think that's going to add too much let's get the incremental discoveries. Let's make this thing, if the next hole we're going to drill is to the east of hole one along that magnetic trend, stepping out another 300-400 meters, if we can identify more zinc copper out that way, then that really expands the potential of this system and puts it into that next level, which is what we want to do as
Yeah.
quickly as we can.
Um, Thank you, Dave. That's a great answer. It's a very exciting project. Moving into the corporate section of the questions, there's just two left. Clint has asked, what are your main concerns right now and how are you overcoming them? I guess it's a bit of a broad question. Is there anything that is a potential objection that's holding things up or holding you back in what you're doing?
No, I don't have to say it's what affects everybody. So we've got the funding We've got the metal in the ground. We've got fantastic support from government, and all the stakeholders at Storm and West Desert. We were just at the Nunavut Mining Symposium. We got to meet the Premier John Mayne, Tom Ulrich from Aston Bay, and myself. And the feedback from local government up there is amazing. It's a very small mining community up there, and everyone's very eager to move things forward. And same with West Desert and the state government there. They've been fantastic. So from a project level, nothing, but there's everything else. We haven't really been impacted that much on fuel costs. A lot of our costs were signed prior to the Iran war, obviously, but there's things outside of our control, like tweets from the Trump administration and things like that, putting the fear into local markets, and this, all we can do is try and be as efficient with the capital as we can, be as technically astute as we can with the projects, and hopefully all the other stuff sort of sorts itself out. So I'd say the biggest risks to what we're doing is things outside of our control. Everything else in our control seems to be going fairly well. So.
Okay, thank you. And this is a question from Matt, actually about 5 different people. They want to know about the share price catalysts. It's always the key question. So, what are the key share price catalysts over the next sort of 6 to 12 months? If you have such conviction in the project, why is the share price remaining stagnant, and what is the company doing about that?
Yeah, so I guess drill further and move things forward through and let the technicals do the talking. And obviously we have a hit, the price came back due to the raise and back to the I guess the offer price, and that's I guess normal. Last time we went up, double in price, which was really, really nice to see. But look, yeah, like I said, there's things outside our control which we have affected, investor sentiment and things like that. But catalysts, we're drilling obviously at West Desert, so there's a lot more drilling to come. Like I said, well, I think we've got some pretty. The first hole is any indication. We've got a fantastic pipeline of targets to test us there, and that's very, very exciting. It allows us to do the 2 projects at once, which is another thing. So, give us that news flow where traditionally that Storm has been focused to generally that seasonality, which obviously we can, West Desert provides the opportunity to overcome that. So look, through Storm, we've got the development options and what's going forward, the exploration plan and what we're doing this year's plan, and then rolling into that. So that will go obviously in the next few months. And then also West Desert, how long does this program go for? First assays due in the next, few weeks, like we talked about. We've got the infill sampling assays to come out. Then we've got the dump, work at West Desert and what opportunity that might provide for us. And there's a lot in that. So we're going to be busy.
Continuing discussions with the US Department of Interior.
Yes.
Lots going on.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, well, I guess
all of the above.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dave, and to all investors who stayed on the call this long. We appreciate it. If we didn't get to your question, as always, please feel free to email us. Both of our details are on the bottom of the ASX announcements. But Dave, I guess to wrap up with, did you have any final questions you wanted to leave shareholders with today?
No, just look, it's an exciting time for American West. We haven't had the 2 projects going for quite a few years, and we've got a lot of money in the door now to see us just do that. So look, I think what we've achieved technically in the last few years has been great, and it's moving the projects forward. So I think there's a lot more to come.
Well, thank you, Dave, and thank you to everyone who joined the webinar. We'll close it there.
Thank you, guys.